Welcome back to Brave Ideas. Today we have an exciting conversation lined up as we dive into my chat with Laura Kozelouzek. Laura is a Florida-based developer and operator with more than 30 years experience in the hospitality and flexible workspace industries. In 2010, she founded Quest Workspaces, which has since become the largest women-owned shared workspace company in the United States. Quest has 13 locations in Florida and Manhattan, comprising of 310,000 square feet of Class A commercial office space and serves more than 1,000 clients. In this episode, we explore how hospitality principles and technology are reshaping workplaces. Her insights into cultural shifts and evolving tenant or customer experiences will inspire anyone in commercial real estate. Before we jump into the episode, I want to welcome Sam Gamble, who's the co-founder and CEO of ReturnSuite, our headline sponsor for this season. Sam, you had a chance to listen to the episode, so I'm curious, what stood out to you most from Laura's insights?
Yeah, it was great just to be able to listen to someone who had so much experience and someone who's seen kind of multiple real estate cycles in her career. One thing that stuck out to me was that she started with leases, started doing some management contracts, and has now switched back to leases. I thought that was really interesting when she kind of got into her reasoning for that.
Yeah, it was interesting for me as well, considering that so many companies are going straight to management agreements, and I'm looking forward to unpacking that later with her. It's a really good conversation. She also talked about how hospitality is evolving, and she started her career in hospitality, so she's very passionate and impassioned about that topic, and then how hospitality gets affected or not by technology and the whole frictionless experience. What were your thoughts on all that?
Yeah, I mean, I just find it really interesting how so many people in Flex have come from different areas and different sub-industries and areas around Flex, and kind of her talking about her restaurant experience and kind of how that's informed her Flex management, and just, she's a funny story about voicemail becoming a big thing. And yeah, it's just really interesting seeing how tech can help enable hospitality.
I mentioned in the bio that Laura's got 30 years experience, and you said earlier she's navigating between lease models to management agreements, and I think all that adds a lot of depth to this whole conversation. But from your perspective, ReturnSuite, helping landlords and operators model, what were your views on her back of the napkin example that she gave?
Oh yeah, I couldn't help but laugh when she said, "Well, I don't really model, just I don't even use a napkin." I think it just goes to show like her level of experience, right? Like she can walk around a space and right away has a good idea whether that space will work for her model or not. That's great. And my hope would be that with ReturnSuite, she'd be able to use a tool like ReturnSuite to help kind of bridge that gap, so landlords understood, and her partners and investors and other people on her team can all understand kind of what she's seeing as well. So it's really kind of a communication tool.
Well, I think, Sam, regardless of whether it's tools like ReturnSuite or other AI related tools, or removing friction from the customer experience, it's really about providing superpowers to the team and letting people be humans and deliver that customer experience. And I think that's what Laura really dives into in this episode. So without further ado, let's jump right into the studio with Laura. Welcome to Brave Ideas, Laura.
Thank you for having me, Caleb. I'm excited to talk.
I'm so excited. It's been over 10 years, I think, since we've seen each other face to face at a WANI event way back in the day.
Yes.
And wow.
Those were good events.
Oh, they were so good. And now we're here at the GWA's immersive event here in New York. It's great to be here in this podcast studio with OFS. Got to give them a shout out.
Yes.
You're here tomorrow moderating a panel for GWA. What's that panel on?
Yes. The panel is focused on events and hospitality. And my background actually is in hospitality. I came out of the hotel industry. I owned a restaurant in New York City. Hospitality's in my DNA. It's
Can I stop you there?
Yeah, of course.
Since it is in your DNA, and obviously you have been doing this for so long in this industry and before, what does hospitality mean to you?
That's a great question. We actually were talking about that. It's one of those words that's getting thrown around so much that the question is, it's like, what is hospitality? And I think that there's several ways to deliver it. There's several definitions for different people for it. And I think it means a lot of different people. So I think it's not the same thing to any one person or company. But I think really, for me, hospitality is making people feel comfortable and welcome and delivering, exceptional service. Service that, before someone even anticipating clients' needs before they even ask for something.
Yeah.
That really is hospitality. And it's interesting because we always think of hospitality as being delivered by people, like that's, in a traditional sense, right? And one of the panel members made an interesting point. He said, hospitality can be delivered through technology. And it's not always necessarily delivering through people, because in my mind, it's something, one of the things, for example, I think that really sets Quest Workspaces apart is that we're so focused on it. Like for me, it's all, we build beautiful spaces, but at the end of the day, it's really the people that are going to make the difference. And it was actually the group that's hosting us at the event tomorrow said, technology is important in hospitality, because when you enter a space, right, having the right Wi-Fi connection, the seamless, frictionless entry, basically being able to move from your task from one point to the other and have it go smooth. That's also hospitality. So I found that really interesting. And, now, especially with the, introduction of AI, and we're all trying to figure out how to, deliver better experiences and more efficiencies through technology, I think we're going to see some really interesting things in the coming years between, a combination of using technology and people to deliver that amazing experience and make people really feel special and welcome and supported. So it's listen, for me, who's been doing this for 33 years, I never thought I would do something this long and not get bored of it. And it just keeps getting more and more interesting. So I'm excited.
Well, I think that's profound, and it's a perspective I think is important to take away, because the people, a lot of people think that it's just the people, and I think that in our industry, when we're talking about workplaces, people are such an important part of creating the vibe and the feeling that people receive when they come in the door. But as you said, that technology has changed over those 33 years, but the technology. The key word I took away from what you said is friction. It's removing that friction.
Absolutely.
Which actually goes into design even. So if you think about the user experience and designing for the UX.
It's with everything. I think it's like, it like hits all the senses and it's becoming even more, you could say, complicated or nuanced in that, we're not building spaces or products to suit one way of work, right? It's not even one company. It's basically supporting every individual within that company or organization and what they need to do at different moments during the day. Yeah. So it's become so dynamic, which is, this is the part that I find really interesting and exciting. And it's funny, Caleb, you mentioned, over 33 years and technology changing. I love to tell the story. Like when I first got into the industry, we didn't have voicemail. Yeah. Voicemail never mind the internet, but there wasn't even voicemail. Now I never check my voicemail. Exactly. But voicemail didn't even exist. And I'll never forget the day when we had to put in voicemail and get our clients used to not having paper messages, right? So when you think about the service level then, it was, answering everyone's phone calls and taking the messages and communicating the messages. And, with technology, we didn't lose the hospitality component of it. The technology just enabled us to do a better job of servicing. So, I don't look at technology or AI as taking the human touch out of it. I think it's going to help support people to be able to provide better services. So, yeah. So that was, I'm excited to hit on that obviously during the discussion tomorrow. We also talked about events and the how, now there's so many incredible, beautiful co-working spaces being built with, rooftops and outdoor spaces and wide open event spaces. And, they're filling so many different needs, not just your typical meeting rooms or conferences. So that's exciting. For me, it's fun because I get to learn too, in all these conversations that we're having.
Yeah, that's what's really good about having these industry events is coming together with our peers, our colleagues, our competitors, but ultimately our friends, and learning and sharing best practice.
There's so many different ways to do it. I mean, there's, and I think that's what I'm seeing is that there's so many applications and different niches that people are serving. So, there's a very big, wide audience out there in terms of providing the kind of services that we provide. And, it's like we were talking earlier and you'd mentioned, owners now, asset owners are now jumping in terms of, seeing their assets as more of a place of service and not just a building, so which is really great. I love that.
Hey everyone, Caleb here. Let me tell you about something that's going to totally change how I work with real estate spreadsheets. If you've ever been stuck in endless tabs of complex cash flow models, you know the pain I've experienced. I just saw a demo for Return Suite, and I've got to say, I'm excited to try it out. This platform is about to make our lives so much easier. You can model cash flow scenarios in minutes, not hours. It's like a breath of fresh air. And here's the cool part. Their co-founder, Sam Gamble, who helped kick off this episode, is looking for 3 beta partners to test their flexible leasing model. Whether you're managed co-working spaces or flex inventory, this is your chance to get early access to something groundbreaking. Let's simplify financial analysis together. Join me as a beta partner and check it out at returnsuite.com/brave. And she works for a landlord here in New York, and her title is Head of Member Experience. And I haven't heard many traditional office landlords having that. We have that in the co-working world, in the serviced office executive suite world, but we don't have that in office real estate very often, and she has that. And I was like, wait, do you have a co-working space within your building? She said, no. We provide an amenity floor, but she comes from co-working. So traditional offices are hiring from the co-working industry.
Yeah, and it's smart. Like when I first started working in this industry, before it was even called co-working, I was hired out of the hotel industry.
Yep.
Because they saw it as, a hospitality business. But that's exciting to hear. It's such a big cultural shift, I think, for asset owners to start seeing their buildings as providing services to the tenants, versus just, an office space, and I think that's going to continue to grow. I mean, that's how these buildings are staying competitive. And I think even what we're seeing is that even smaller assets where they can't necessarily have someone in charge of just member experience, they're welcoming co-working operations, and they like what it's bringing to the building. It's almost setting a tone, if you will, between the tenants. And we have a product in Coral Gables, Florida, where we were approached by the owner, Alan Morris, to come into the building and actually operate a co-working space. And we leased the space. It wasn't a partnership or anything like that, but it's a partnership of sorts because we work together. And we built the tenant conference room in our space. And we service that tenant conference room. And we have an outdoor roof deck that all of the tenants in the building are welcome to. We host events, and it's they're welcome to come up and have coffee and use all of our common spaces. So that bridge between, I remember back in the day when, talking to owners of office buildings and then saying, well, we don't really love your business because you're going to use our elevators too much because you have too many people in the space, right? So that's what I was used to hearing in New York City even just 20 years ago. And now it's like they see it's this very interesting ecosystem where, they've got the smaller users come to us. We grow them, then they go into the building, and then they then come back to us for services as tenants within the building, and it all works together, which is great.
And this has been happening for so long unofficially that now it's becoming more official. And I think we've seen this proliferation or this evolution of the mindset from the landlord to say, okay, well, actually, we do want this serviced office company in the building, this co-working company, whatever you want to call it, flex operator. We want it in the building. And we've seen a lot of operators in our industry, the various brands here in the US, in the UK, say, okay, well, actually, they need us. So let's pivot from a lease model, which you just said you undertake, to a management agreement. And I understand you don't do management agreements. And
I don't have any now. So I'm sorry. Actually, I said to you, I'm not doing any, but I have done them in the past.
You have done them.
Oh, yes. Yes. And certain times I think they make sense.
Well, this is where I want to unpack this because I think a lot of operators are looking to go into management agreements versus lease arbitrage. And we saw the whole WeWork debacle with lease arbitrage. Why are you doubling down on leases?
I wouldn't say that we're doubling down on leases. I think that, number one, I think the way the buildings are financed and buildings are and operate, right? I think it's a lot easier for an owner to underwrite a lease than it is a JV or a management contract. So, and it's not, it has nothing to do with, oh, they don't like your business or they don't like you or anything like that. It's just, it really comes down to their loan covenants and governances on the building. So it's a lot easier for them to underwrite a lease. So, if you're only focused on management contracts, you're going to lose opportunities, I think. So, and so it's more attractive for an owner if you do a lease, period. So, however, okay, there are times I believe that it also makes sense to do, it could be a management contract or a JV. And it depends on the situation in the building and the level to which they're interested in putting one in their building. Oftentimes, I've seen asset owners will agree to management contracts when they have to because they can't get someone to lease it. And they, it's not necessarily, oh, we love the business, we want to be a partner. It's often because they have space to fill and they're willing to get creative, and that's been my experience. Now, that's not to say that there are operators that do an amazing job at management contracts and they do it in large scale. And it's what, like when you look at even the hotel industry, you've got companies like Marriott, like that's all they do. They don't own their assets. I mean, that's the business of it. And if you're going to do that, something of the management contracts at large scale like that, it could be a very good business model and there's nothing wrong with it. For us, we're very entrepreneurial. We're very opportunistic. And I sort of make that decision based on the situation, the market, the building, the objectives of the owner, what I think that actual location's capable of doing, and if I if I have a situation where I'm not so comfortable, I mean, you said it right there. It's arbitrage, right? So if that's like a strong word. So if you're gonna do something like, and I don't necessarily, I think it's, if you feel, maybe because I've been doing this for 33 years, there's like a sixth sense, right? And I didn't predict the pandemic by any means, right? None of us did. But I've been through so many ups and downs in the real estate cycles that when things start to get so frothy and heated up, like I tend to take a step back and say, okay, so the numbers are not really making sense. Okay. And when that happens, I will take a more conservative approach and I'll want to do something more along the lines of a management contract or a JV. And I'll be very honest about it. I'll say, you know what, there's the possibility the market might be going down. And in that case, that the rents that you want to get today may not be the rents that are capable in the next few years. But if I feel like we're in a market that's growing, that has a lot of upside, I'll be very comfortable signing a lease. I don't feel like it's really arbitrage. I feel like it's like a developer. A developer develops a building and they've got to have the foresight and the confidence that that's going to keep growing in that area. It's not going to go down.
Yeah, and I just think back to my times working with landlords and thinking through the management agreement, and you're 100% right. They'd much rather have a lease because it's easier to capitalize, especially if they're going to sell the asset in the next couple of years. If a landlord feels like that the market's not going to be great, then they're probably not going to want to do a management agreement at all. And so they'd rather have that lease, even if it's a lower rent, because at least they've got the guaranteed income they can capitalize.
Right.
So
right.
It's interesting comments that you make. And
the other thing too, Caleb, you have to mention too, like I've done so many of them over the years, and maybe that's because I go back to like my hospitality background. Like when I partner up with whether it be a landlord, or in one case it was actually a tenant that we took over their space, and then we we monetized their space that they weren't using. We became partners. For me, then it's like, okay, that's my partner. I have to now, that's
you're your investor.
Yeah. And it's almost like, okay, this is someone you're going to answer to and you're going to work with. And when you're doing this across the board, you can sometimes have several different companies that you're doing it for. And that becomes a very time consuming task, just managing that relationship and teaching them how the business works and having them understand how the business works. And, it's not even like you're doing it for one partner. In many cases, it could be several if you're doing management contracts. So that's what I'm saying. If you've decided as a company, as an operator, that that's the path you want to go to grow, and you've invested in that infrastructure to do it, that's one thing. But, for smaller operators, a word of, just advice, I guess, is just keep that in mind too. And for what we could probably open, 3 locations, it would take more time to run them one managed, because you're managing that relationship as well. It's a lot more, corporate time, I guess you could say.
Well, you almost need a head
that.
office team member to be able to
Yes.
support the relationships. I think a lot of the operators that are moving from lease arbitrage to management agreements, and we're talking about this throughout the season, is the transparency you have to deliver to your partner, to the owner, or to the tenant that you're partnering with, the investor, to deliver the level of transparency, to teach them the business of understanding the occupancy, the churn, how you're setting your rates, and why you're doing your discounts, and what your costs are, and why you need to invest in have the capital reserve in there. All that's
Yes, that's what I did all during COVID. A good, probably 50% of my time through COVID was spent working with our asset owners so that they understood what was going on and where we needed any kind of help or relief in working it through together. Because, I think the way we managed through it successfully was that we were helping our clients get through it, right? So we're doing what we need to do to help them. And then I was like, okay, we've all got to kind of pitch in here to make this work so that at the end of this thing, we're all going to be successful. And that was constant communication and, having them understand the business, understand the markets, how we're navigating through this difficult situation. And so, and that's kind of what you sign up for in management contracts, is when you have a partner like that. So for us right now, we've decided not to, but they're, we could talk next year, and I may have a few.
Well, let's certainly keep in touch on that. I have one final question for you, because I know you have a dinner to get to.
Yes.
So Return Suite is our sponsor for this season. And they're doing modeling software, helping landlords and operators and investors have transparency in the underwriting process. So I'm curious, from your perspective on the lease model that you deploy, how do you underwrite? Are you using Excel, or what do you use to?
Sometimes I use the back of a napkin.
Oh no, yeah, that's in the beginning. That's the first pass, right?
No, yes, and no. It's funny. Well, because I think, my son, we were at dinner the other day, and I was explaining this to him, and he's studying real estate at University of Miami, and he's got all these great complicated real estate modeling, classes, and he's learning all this stuff, and he's talking about the IRR and the this and the that, and I said, Jordan, it's very simple what I do. This, and he goes, well, what are you using? What are you using for your modeling software? And I said, oftentimes it starts with the back of a napkin, and then it goes into an Excel spreadsheet, obviously, but. I think for me, it's a bit, after doing it for so many years, it's like an art and a science, and even down to I can walk a second generation space with just a rough floor plan, and, with my whiteout. And I know this sounds like I'm dating myself, and it sounds like really old school.
Whiteout, what is that?
I swear to God.
You got a fax machine too,
No,
don't you?
it's true. I can eyeball it, and I use a pencil and whiteout, and I'm not joking that I get within 5% of an efficiency of a space, because I know the window mullions are a certain size. So I think there's a certain amount of doing something for so long that you can, usually what happens is I know when I see it, and I could just from the numbers, I can figure out what it's going to do. And then oftentimes I'll do my own little fast feasibility study to see what the market is able to generate, in terms of competitors and stuff. And then afterwards, I'll say, this is what it's going to do. And then, I have my team, they'll put together the spreadsheets. I'm like, you're right. This is what it came out to. I'm like, okay, good. Let's go do it.
Awesome. That is so good.
Yeah. So
Well,
we try to keep it simple.
Well, there you go. The KISS methodology,
KISS
back of the
method.
napkin. Laura, thank you so much. It's an honor to sit down with you with so much experience that you have in this industry.
It was my pleasure. I enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
We've seen so many companies rise and fall since the last time I saw you.
Yeah.
You guys are still around and growing.
Oh, yeah. We're having fun. We're having a
Yes.
good time. We're going to keep doing this for a long time.
Well, thank you again.
Thank
Enjoy
you.
yourself
Thanks,
tomorrow. I
Caleb.
look forward to the panel.
Yes.
And thank you for tuning in. Until next time, take care of yourself. If you've enjoyed this episode, you'll enjoy our Brave Ideas newsletter. Subscribe today by tapping on the link in the show notes. And don't forget, I'm always on the lookout for buildings to acquire and reposition with brand-led hospitality. If you know a building I should look at or an owner looking to sell or partner with, drop me a DM or contact us at bravecorp.co. Until next time, take care of yourself.